they introduced a pension scheme. I mean, this was light years ahead of the competitors. And then they decided to go the full hog completely. And they introduced what they called a widow's pension scheme. And a great cry from mothers to their daughters in these areas back in those days. Mary, go out and get yourself a Guinness man, for he is as good dead as he is alive. That's all they want, guys. The check in the post. Don't be fooled. One of the most controversial deans, he was horrified what he experienced on the streets surrounding the church here and the conditions that local Irish people had to endure at the time. He wrote many novels, including Gulliver's Travels, which he wrote while he was dean of the cathedral here. We'll make our way on back up towards Christ Church Cathedral. We'll go underneath the archway of Christ Church Cathedral, and just as we drop the hill, we'll turn left, and we'll show you part of the only part of the old city walls we have remaining. Actually, as we go through the archway of Christ Church Cathedral, again there's a number of modern buildings on the right hand side. Again, a little sore in the eye. And again, no offence to any architects or engineers, beautiful buildings if they were out in a modern suburb, but not in such an old part of the city. But to add insult to injury, when they were actually clearing the site to build these buildings, they uncovered a very early Viking settlement, possibly the original Viking settlement of Dublin. Archaeologists moved in onto the site, and after about 18 months, the city fathers came along and said, listen guys, you've had your fun, move on. They said, you must be joking. This should be left, possibly as an open-air museum for future generations to enjoy. Fell on deaf ears, and they cleared the site and they went ahead and built what we can only describe as bunkers. And it is, if you like, the straw that broke the camel's back, because after the completion of these buildings, we never really trusted the city fathers again. And because apart from, as I say, there's nothing wrong with the buildings if they were in a modern suburb, but not in one of the oldest parts of the city, and as I say, to add insult to injury, to be built on top of an original Viking settlement. Also, when you're travelling along by the riverside, these buildings, they also block the fine view we once had of Christchurch. Driveway, walkway that either leads or hugs along by the water. And in this instance, it's the waters of the River Liffey, Liffey. But first we have our the Brazen Head. You can see that on the gable end of the building there, claiming to be one of the oldest pubs in the country, established back in the year of 1198. But as I say, as we travel along the quays, Quays, the body of water, the River Liffey, it's very tidal at this point. For we're only about a mile away from the open sea, the Irish Sea, the body of water between Ireland and England. We're on the south side, across the north side, and the body of water greatly divides the city in two. Those living on this side, the south side, as they consider themselves to be ever so posh, jolly good show, and all that kind of stuff. Those living on the north side are considered to be more the working class, if you like. And there are many people that will not crisscross that body of water. Dear golly gosh. In the year of 2000, we didn't celebrate with any one big Millennium Dome or anything like that. We decided to embark on a number of smaller projects. And one of them is a new bridge here, designed by a Spanish gentleman. And it's simply called James Joyce Bridge, after the writer James Joyce from the city of Dublin. As we go through this next junction here, I will ask you all to bless yourselves, for you are going on to sacred ground. For as far as the eye can see, off to the left-hand side, it's where they've been brewing this ghastly black stuff since the year of 1759. Those of you that are not familiar with the Guinness, it's this heavy, dark liquid with a creamy white head on top. Good reason for the creamy white head, for Guinness have their own exclusive supply of water from the River Liffey here on the right hand side, as to where they're making it more sort of cycle friendly, pedestrian friendly, and they're closing more and more of the roads here in the park, and really it's only accessible for most of it these days by bicycle or indeed walking. Monument here on the left-hand side, and this is dedicated to the Duke of Wellington. He was actually born in Dublin. He wasn't particularly proud of the fact he was born in Dublin. He was actually often quoted as saying, for one to be born in a stable doesn't necessarily follow that one is a horse. That's about as much as he thought of Dublin at the time. But they say, as the years went on, he grew to have a certain fondness for the way back in 1775 in a place called Carsavine in the county of Kerry, and went on to become what became known as the Great Liberator, if you like, fighting and gaining Catholic emancipation. And in more recent times, we've renamed most of our main thoroughfares after this one gentleman, Daniel O'Connell. But back in the 1700s, it was then known as Sackville Street, and indeed Sackville Street was considered to be one of the finest boulevards in all of Northern Europe. Take a little stroll along. So sacred was the formula of the black stuff. We had to have guns trained on it 24/7. But when, as I say, Sackville Street, it's today known as O'Connell Street, in the GPO, and they're leaning against this big pillar, and they slide to the end, and they look up in the air, and one says to the other, "Who's your man on top?" And they said, "That's Admiral Nelson." And who's Admiral Nelson when he's at home? Oh, he's a famous British Admiral Nelson. And what's a British Admiral Nelson doing looking into the windows of our GPO, where our forefathers fought for Ireland's freedom? That ain't right. I'm going to blow him up. And they blew him up. His head is probably still waste of taxpayers' money. The younger generation quite like it. They say it's about the only monument in the centre of Dublin City that doesn't necessarily have a political or a religious slant to it. It's just there, right in the centre of the street. So, as I say, this is the main thoroughfare of O'Connell Street, Dublin. We'll crisscross with the next little junction here, and we've laid our new tram tracks along there. We then make our way onwards up, and I'll point out a fine statue to a Jim or James Larkin. And this is the very site he would have stood back in the early 20th century, shouting and screaming for improved conditions of the workers at the time. Mind you, it very often fell simply on deaf ears. So eventually he joined forces in 1916 with the Irish Volunteers. But here's the man himself, Mr. Jim Larkin. He would be also the founder of the modern trade union movement here in Ireland, there on the right-hand side. This is the building that he stormed in 1916 on the left-hand side, and the famous GPO. You'll still actually see some of the bullet marks there on the columns. And of course a big movie made over the years simply called Michael Collins, if anybody's ever seen that movie. And it'll bring you back memories of all these buildings and this area here. As we go to the next junction here, again left and right, this is another quite a big shopping precinct, and this would be the main shopping precinct on the north side of the River Liffey. Henry Street off here to our left hand side, and it's busy year round. Further up on the right hand side, we have a little statue to Father Matthew, and Father Matthew, he converted people even in their darkest hours, I say, to stay clear of the evil alcohol there back in the famine period of the mid-19th century, and founded a huge organisation today known as the Temperance Movement. At the very top of this street, at the very top of O'Connell Street, I say, there's a fine bronze statue to a young Protestant, a Charles Stuart Parnell. He lived further south of here in the county of Wicklow, but he was very outspoken, and he wasn't at all very Parnell Square here. We'll wind our way right down O'Connell Street again. We'll cross over the River Liffey, and then at that point then, I say, we'll wind our way up towards Trinity College. Trinity College, today one of many universities in the city of Dublin, but it was one of the first universities, and it was laid originally.
I know you love me, Kathleen dear. Your thoughts wherever honest and true. I always know when you are near. that life holds nothing dear but you. The smile.
What? Yeah, it's about 40 miles due northwest of the city of Dublin. We let the Scottish take the credit, but that's where it was filmed, just there on the right-hand side. Why it was filmed there was Mel Gibson did do a deal with the military barracks over here on the right-hand side for quite a sizable amount of money up front that he could have access.
Our top stallion is Invincible Spirit. His stud fee is €60,000, and we had an offer for him by Sheikh Mohammed, one of the Arabian stud owners. He offered 60 million for him about 4 years ago. But the stud decided, because he is our top guy, the stud decided they didn't want to sell him. He's our flagship stallion and very popular with breeders because he's had a very large number of winners among his progeny. Very high ratio of winners to foals. So he covers about 200 mares a year, and they decided to offer Sheikh Mohammed a share in the stallion. So he paid €11 million, and he can bring 22 mares each year to visit the stallion. So that was
Toma fotos del lugar. Están hablando.
Is he 16? Yeah. He's actually got bigger since he came, hasn't he? He's filled out, I suppose. Anyway, very, very successful. Covered about 200 mares last season, and I presume he'll probably do the same next season. Did he? Did he? Yeah. He did. Yeah. Yeah. He's well fed. He's not too worried.
Right, what part? Oh, I've been up there hundreds of times. My girlfriend's from Galway.
Oh, really?
I lived up in the Blue Mountains there for a while.
Oh, lovely.
What are you doing over here this time of the year when you could be over in Bondi Beach?
It's cold out of there.
Twinkling your toes in the
Cold
sand.
and wet.
Well, I left Miami for this.
Yeah? Well, you can take the tablets later on, right?
Looks like a feisty boy.
25 and Sydney's not. That's cold.
How old is he?
That's 7.
Going on here if anyone wants to take the photo.
Art connoisseur. Yes.
Very nice.
Lovely morning.
Isn't it lovely mind?
Lovely Irish weather.
This guy did a lot of his winning at Ascot, Royal Ascot, you may have heard of, Bingoes, and he won the Jubilee Stakes. And again, a young star, so it'll be a while before they know exactly how
Balls were
successful.
nice. First
Yeah,
of
which is
the
good.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul. Breakfast is Paul is there.
We're keeping it.
He's done his gym for the day, so he'll be breakfast. So that's a big bad Bob. I think his sire was Bob Back, so I think rather than having any terribly bad habits or anything, that's really why his name is as is. But he's a popular sire. Now, all my covering, there's no AI in Thoroughbred Saturday really. The covering shed is here, and there's very little romance in the Thoroughbred racing or any horsery. It's all over in about 2 minutes. And the mare is scanned at 15 days again, and for 2 days to make sure she's in foal and holding the fetus. And at that point, usually the owner or breeder will bring the mare home because there's 11 months gestation. And mind your head.
Yeah. Well, imagínate. Yo estoy tomando video.
Unfortunately, the rain has everything very damp, but it's lovely when the sun shines. You see the white gate up in the distance there on the right hand side? Beyond that, on your left, you'll see some stable yards, and just beyond that again on the right, you'll see 3 horses in a paddock. and the one with the star and is chestnut is vintage cock. So if anyone wants to go up and see him, they're welcome.
You think he's gonna get fed? Ah,
That is actually Bonnie is actually taller than the. Did you find that somewhat depressing?
anything to give him?
He's decided to cliff with the person.
Ok, mira, ahí viene.
Otra vez. Is that the vintage copper? Yeah, that's the one.
All right. To see a famous horse
Oh, yes.
from down under.
Harry's a horse. He just went down.
Está viniendo. Está viniendo.
Come on, good fella. Have any questions?
Todo el mundo sentado en la